It was like someone put the debate among Leinster fans over Kieran Frawley versus Ross Byrne into ChatGPT, which then produced the match we saw on Saturday. We probably should explain, so it's time to start harping on rugby. Hello, my name is Jeff Pagano, and welcome to Harpin On Rugby, where with the help of some fellow fans, I get the chance to harp on what's going on with Leinster, Ireland, and the wider rugby world. First up, joining me is someone earning cap number 60. Well, welcome back to Mr. Tom Coleman.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks for having me back. Good to see you. Good to see you, Kieran.
Indeed. And as our second guest, completing the same pairing that wrapped Leinster's win in Edinburgh a few weeks ago, we have the owner of the site Post to Post Sport, making pod appearance number 23 to go with a host of Harpin blog articles over the years. Hello again to Mr. Kieran Duffy.
Yeah, it's a big one for me today because it's my last pod appearance, harping on rugby contribution at all in my 20s. I turned 30 on Wednesday, so it's a big it's my last one in my prime.
Jesus,
So
you left the suspense there. Well, I say, what? He's not coming back. What's going on? What did I do? What have I said? No, fair play to you, and happy birthday in advance.
Absolutely. Happy birthday, Kieran. Welcome to the dark side of the moon.
yeah, it's all downhill. It's been downhill a while, in fairness. I think it's just more downhill now.
You're talking to two guys who are a hell of a lot further down the hill,
Yeah.
so we should probably change the subject pretty quickly. And why don't we? Let's crack on with our feature match of the week, which was, of course, Benetton v Leinster in round 3 of the 24-25 United Rugby Championship. It was played in the Stadio di Monigo on Saturday evening, and it was Benetton out half Jacob Umaga getting the game underway, Tom.
It was definitely wet starting this week there against Treviso, against Benetton. And it sort of dictated the early stages of the game. I think it was so wet underfoot. Um, we seen the sort of dual kicking threat of Lowe and Osborne, who were picked on the wing in a 12. Jimmy Osborne, after a stint at fullback for Ireland in the summer, was back in the 12 position. And we seen a few exits earlier on. I think Leinster were obviously trying to play for territory earlier on and then force Benetton into making mistakes in their own half. And on that score, Benetton definitely duly obliged with there was from their point of view, it was a bit of an error strewn first 15 minutes of the game. Plenty of unforced errors. I know there's lots of pressure from our side that contributed that, but I think the review on Monday for Benetton on the what ifs to knock the mistakes out of it. That's what they'll be looking back in the first sort of 15 minutes, half an hour of this game, where they basically lost the tie, really. Regardless of what happened then for the second half and onwards to the end of the game, Benetton had lost this game in the first sort of 20 minutes of this game. And they look back at it going, yeah, there's a lot of errors. As for us, I think, yeah, we were looking to kick territory early on with the two guys that I'd mentioned and try and force some errors on Benetton. And it didn't really take long for our new signing RG Simon to make his first little introduction. He got an big arm in at the Kraken. I think some of the lads online christened them those octopus arms getting in, and he sort of forced a knock on. Again, Benetton will highlight that maybe as a forced error from there because they didn't really secure the ball off the back of their own line out that well, and it allowed RG get his hands in. We sort of first scrum of the game, and this repeated itself a few times throughout the game. We gave away a scrum penalty. Porter was pinged, and I think we gave away four in the end of at the end of the night. So that's definitely one of the work-ons for Leinster this week before they play Munster in Croke Park. We didn't get a great exchange out of the scrums overall. Giving away four scrum penalties, some of them are on our own ball, isn't great. But shortly after that scrum penalty, I think it was Josh van der Fleer got a sort of half rip in on a Benetton attack, and so the ball sort of fell kindly to Frawley. Again, this came from Leinster's in-your-face pressure. We'll talk about that maybe more throughout both halves, how Leinster sort of blitz defence. But it was in this instance that sort of blitz and in their face, it sort of forced a bit of an error. It was a bit of a rip from Josh, and Frawley regathered and he put in a lovely little kick. It wasn't, commentary thought it was a 50-22, but he was in the Benetton half at that stage. And it was a Benetton line out, maybe about 8 or 9 meters out. The second sign we've seen from Leinster that we probably haven't seen is we were throwing um, one or two pods a lot of the times up on opposition ball, whether it be 5 meters from our own line or in this instance was 7 or 8 meters from Benetton's own line. And Conan got up at the front and really made a messy ball. We've seen Baird doing it a lot last year, but this year we've seen a couple of instances now, in this game especially with where we were throwing two pods up, and maybe that's what Snyman allows you to do. But it was Conan that got up at the front, made a really messy ball, and the ball thrown back to Gary Beasy was messy. He missed it, and it went to the 10, and it ended up a very short clearance. We ended up getting a line out, um, for ourselves, and then it was sort of just we got the line out, and we tried a maul scrum or a maul line out off our own ball, and they infringed. We were playing a sort of an advantage, and eventually on the second one, and again another maul. This time it was better formed. Benetton were all a bit at sea at the defence, and eventually their loose head prop pulled them all down as it was going towards the line, and it was a definite penalty try. Like instantly, you could see him come in from the side and pull it down just at the line. And I suppose Kelleher was sort of denied a try, and the referee Evans went to the pocket as well, and a yellow card. So it was 7-0 to Leinster, and it was a costly time as well for Benetton because they obviously lost their prop for 10 minutes. It didn't take as long to get a second score off the restart. Jack Conan made a fantastic catch. He was right underneath it. And it was funny, obviously Leinster have been working on this. Maybe we spoke about in the pods, I remember several times last year we were getting blue in the face talking about Leinster's switching off slightly on receiving kickoffs. We think of the games against La Rochelle, etc., etc., where we'd score and then we'd give away a penalty very quickly. But interestingly enough, I've seen a few times in this game where, and in the Edinburgh game, where when we were receiving kickoffs, we were now using it as an attacking platform rather than having and I don't want to call it a negative mindset, just to go phase and clear it and get it out for a line out. We've now purposely set up a sort of attacking platform, and this was the case in this instance. As I said, Conan regathered, and it was very quickly, if anyone looking back on the game, you sort of freeze frame the game, you can see the Leinster backs getting in shape, and it was all about options really. So Gibson Park, after the ruck was formed, after Conan regathered, Gibson Park had three options. He had Van der Fleer beside him. He had RG sort of at the front of the diamond, and I think he had Ronan Kelleher outside him. So as soon as he threw it to RG Snyman had both Van der Fleer left and Kelleher right, and that sort of kept the Benetton defence. But Frawley was just tucked in behind that, so RG was able to pull the ball back. We know the guy from his time with South Africa and the glimpses we had about Munster. He's got the skill set and the ball handling. So he was able to a lovely pullback pass to Frawley. And again, Osborne had set up nearly tucked in behind Ringrose and was going off at a different angle. And Ringrose came hard on a hard direct line off Frawley's ball, and that was it. He made the line break. He lined up I think it was one of the props maybe, lined up a weakness in the defence. But Leinster had decided that as soon as Conan regathered and they got into that sort of attacking format. Ringrose made a great break, and then it was just the speed and pace from Gibson Park just came like it was like looking at Shelbourne Park. I don't know the last time I was there, but he came from a raid and passing out players and lovely pass. And Gibson Park scanning, I know we'll talk about it for I think the next try as well. His scanning, as soon as he receives the ball, he's up. His head is heads up rugby. Like he is literally the epitome of heads up rugby. And Frawley made a great trail run, and a lovely fend on Menicello, like who's Six Nations Player of the Year, and he put him on his ass, and Frawley dotted down under the post. It was just a marvelous try, but it sometimes as coaches you say, well, play what's in front of you, see what's going to happen. But I think there's a sign there for me that Leinster, this a bit of attacking mindset from a restart rather than what you see a lot of teams doing these days, especially on wet underfoot conditions. It's all about just getting out of your own half, not making errors, and clearing, and then you're sort of giving a line out back to the opposition. But they'd obviously decided this is the way they're going to play. So it'll be interesting to see how that develops over the rest of the season. But yeah, so off to a cracking start was sort of 14-0. As I said, I've got the lucky half, or Kieran's got the unfortunate wet second half. Um, yeah, it didn't take long for sort of a third try then. We had a scrum sort of 6, 7 meters out from the Treviso try line. Nothing major. It was just to set up a direct hard line run from Jamie Osborne, who took us on an angle rather than just a straight run, and that's what it sucked in a few defenders. But again, anyone looking back at the game, I'd say just keep an eye on Gibson Park before he even gets to the ruck. This tells me how confident this guy is playing. 9 times out of 10, if you're talking to a nine, you're like, make sure you get the ball first, because you're afraid of knocking it on, especially wet conditions like that. There's legs, there's bodies in the way, you're trying to get through little traffic to get to the ruck, but he's completely scanning up, and you could see on his blind side, and it's not the first time we've seen Gibson Park do that sort of patented loop pass back across the opposite side of where we've come, and Jack Conan dotted down in the corner for a good try, and Frawley had a massive conversion from this pretty much the sideline to make it 21. But again, that was all about Gibson Park. It was just speed of the ruck after Osborne's break, and then just the heads up. He's just so good at that. Where a lot of other nines would have their head buried in the back of that ruck trying to dig the ball out, and so all the players have to do their little role there to allow Gibson Park have clean ball. But yeah, it was just fantastic play from Gibson Park, and it was sort of a dream start. It was 21-0, and in some ways, with the 15 we started with, it sort of reflected maybe our hopes, maybe rather than expectations of how the first half would go with the team we picked. Um, we The other key factor of the half, I think, was just we spoke about Benetton's sloppiness. We got a better look this week of Leinster's sort of, I'll call it a slightly rehashed blitz defense, because initially on the first year under Nienaber, you seen Gary Ringrose in the 13 channel sort of shooting out, and people say he missed a lot of tackles, and he has missed a lot of tackles, but he's mainly doing it to shoot out to force people back inside to the heavier traffic. But this was a slightly tweaked version of this, because what we seen was all the backs flooding through on the Benetton ball en masse, and really putting pressure on the whole back line, and just the number of errors we forced out of Benetton by that rush defense. It'll be interesting to see. We chatted on the WhatsApp group amongst ourselves. Would we try that as much against a team who has a playmaking 12? Because I'm thinking of somebody like Willie LaRue who could slot in and maybe kick behind that. I suppose it'd be interesting to see if it's horses for courses. And then the last try, just to make it 28-0, and sort of the dream start and the bonus point. Again, it was the scrum. We had first phase of the scrum. Jimmy O'Brien was on the wing, and he sort of came off the wing as you do on the inside channel, and Gibson Park passed to Frawley. Frawley took the inside ball at Jimmy O'Brien, but he got sucked up into defence, didn't quite make the break. And in the second phase, Gibson Park obviously got the ball after Jimmy was tackled, and this was all about work rate and options. Because again, if anyone looks back on the game, so you had the first phase off the scrum. So that's obviously the scrum is there with eight forwards in each team of the scrum. So as soon as the ball breaks, Gibson passes to Jimmy O'Brien, and obviously the attack breaks down momentarily. Then all after this, it's all about work rate. The difference really with Benetton and Leinster was Benetton were slow about getting back into midfield, and so Leinster's second phase attack, you had, I think, Jack Conan, Joe McCarthy, and Caelan Doris on the outside of those two coming at pace. So Gibson Park had three options where to go, and the Benetton sort of matchups of those three players, they were slow getting around. So it looked like a good hard finish, or good easy finish, I'd say, for Caelan to burst through and get the score. But it was the work rate of our forwards getting round for that second phase of play and Benetton not getting around as quick was the difference. And I think Coms mentioned about doing the non-skillful things that are 100%. I forget the exact phrase, but the no talent. I think that no talent where work rate doesn't. You don't need talent to be a hard worker. And I think Leinster in that try um showed that stuff like that, just pure work rate and willingness to get up out of a scrum and get round and be an option for your nine. Sort of created. He had three options rather than if those two guys hadn't have made the run, maybe Doris was going to be on his own, maybe with the likes of Osborne supporting him, and we would have fell short. Might have got in again in the next phases after that, but it's all about the work rate for me. And it was sort of a dream start, 28-0. And really and truly, the game was done at that stage, regardless of what happened after that. I suppose other key parts of the game was just to finish off. Kelleher obviously got a knock in that first half. Very earlier on, it was 5 or 6 minutes. They kept him on worryingly. I'm not sure why. I don't know why, and hopefully it's not made it worse. Lee Barron has shown that he's well capable of coming on, and especially in the pack he was playing on. Do you know what I mean? You have to sort of trust your. I know who Lee would probably be third choice hooker at this stage, but you have to sort of trust him if he's got two lines on his right and left shoulder, and he's got the back five that we had in the pack. You should have brought him in, brought him on earlier. I think some people that was at the game, including Davids, thought Ronan might have rolled his ankle, and sometimes you can run that off. But I don't think, it's not like an AIL game where you're not playing for a week or two later. I think
Yeah, and they checked him twice as well. There was he was down once and then he was down a second. I thought he really would have at least come off that second time, but they
yeah,
kept him on a few more minutes after that.
yeah, they kept him on a few, and just hopefully it didn't do much damage. He looks like he came off okay on his own steam off the
Mm.
pitch, which is good, but it's worrying. We could do with him next week in Croke Park, obviously. And obviously the second knock in that game was, and it probably had a more major effect on the game, on what poor Kieran has to talk about, is Jimmy O'Brien gone off.
Mm.
And, Jimmy going off by himself is one thing, but I think we definitely lost a lot of momentum after the fourth try. When we had to rejig Ross Byrne obviously came on at 10, and I know Ross is getting a lot of flack online and for his performance, and even our own Richard Mifsud, who's his biggest fan, giving him grief, and that's fair as well. I think it's unfortunate that a lot of the blame is going to be falling at Ross's floor, when especially when they're comparing. You can hold the mirror up to himself and Frawley's performances, and you can see the stark differences on the night. But I think obviously then Osborne went to 12, Frawley went to 13, and Ringrose went out in the wing, which was an interesting choice. I mean, there was other options, and who am I to say? I think it was maybe a chance to put Osborne back at full back and try Keenan on the wing as something different, because I think he would be well equipped to do that, and leave Frawley and Ringrose at 12 and 13. Because with the rejigging, the one big line break Treviso had in the first half came after we rejigged. They made a massive break up on the far side of the pitch, made about 50 yards, and it's just like the Red Sea opened. So yeah, the rejigging didn't really work, and we sort of lost a lot of momentum on what we were trying to do in attack. The last thing I just mentioned on it is the 6-2 split that we've went for. People lay the blame at Leo, really, but obviously Nienbar has a huge effect on what the selection is. It's just not Leo's call. I'm not giving Leo an out here, but obviously the 6-2 thing is very much an Nienbar thing. It used to be with Cullen for years that he was there. And I think the 6-2 thing works well until it doesn't. And especially it only works depending on the personnel you have on the bench. And having a 6-2 split with Ross Byrne, and I'm giving Ross an out here, just doesn't work, in my opinion. And it sort of echoed a little bit going back to the South Africa game we played in Durban when Willie LaRue went off after 3 or 4 minutes, and they had a 6-2 split, and it sort of fecked up their backline a bit for a while. Um, if you've got the forward dominance on the bench that South African can bring on to sort of half nullify that by keeping the ball tight within playing 10-man rugby, for want of a better expression. We didn't have that on the bench with our youngish replacements, so it became more exposed. For me, the 6-2 didn't really work. But I think the 6-2 could work a lot if Frawley was on the bench, because he's a versatile player, and etc. You can slot in. It just, if we're going 6-2, And I'm not sure why we went 6-2 against Benetton, to be honest with you. And with all due respects to Benetton, they're a good improving team, but it's not like we were away at La Rochelle in the European Cup or
It
away
could
at
have been. It
Cologne.
could have been just a sort of a trial run, just to get used to managing it. Maybe I don't know,
Maybe,
but
yeah,
I did,
possibly, yeah.
I did think it was strange to have it for
Yeah,
this
and look,
particular game.
hindsight's an easy. It's easy for me to sit here and go, yeah, it didn't really work because it
Mm,
didn't. I'm not dismissing the 6-2, but I think
yeah.
it only works depending on who you have at 22 and 23. And obviously the 22 has to be the scrum half, or at least if you're going 21, 20, and then the 23 is obviously another forward. So it
Mm,
depends who you have at 21 and 22. That 22 slot especially, and I don't think it works with Ross because it's quite limiting on what we can do when he has to come on and it's the amount of rejigging. But look, ending on a positive, four tries up, bonus point in wet conditions. That team, I mentioned the South Africa game at Durban, all those guys really hadn't played since then. So, it was a really ideal start. And in some ways we're picking over the negatives or I'm picking over the negatives with the scrum penalties and maybe the breakdown in our shape. And that does sound a bit picky. Yeah, it's better to be concentrating on a lot of the positives we've seen in that half and what I've seen around attack and stuff. So yeah, so great start. And Benetton are a tough team as we seen last year. They haven't got off the greatest start this year, but getting away with a 28-0 lead is we all would have bitten our hands off of that at halftime.
Yeah, I mean, overall, it was a good first half. I mean, when we saw the team named on Friday, we were all going like, "Wow!" What I mean, pretty much every position was a lot. It was overall a lot stronger than we're ever used to seeing, especially in an away fixture at this stage of the season. So that did put a pressure on them to show that the dominance in the selection from the go, and you could see that they were trying that, as you say, they were trying new things.
Mm.
And I did think it was interesting that it's important for Leinster to do this. It's to they're very good at certain options, like you say. We've got these booming left boots for exits, but if you do that all the time, the other team's going to be ready for it. So you've got to have another option, and we've always got
Yeah,
that option to play our way out of the 22 as well. It's a sort of this theme that's saying this sort of the keeping the other teams honest who are going to try this playbook against us, and so that was the exit strategy. The two pod option at lineouts, that's a new thing as well. That's going to be things
yeah,
that people are going to be looking for now. But if we don't do it, I mean, there are ways around that. You could throw short, you could throw long if you know the other team are going to do it. But it's another option to sort of keep them guessing when it comes to going after their ball. And then of course you got the blitz defense, which they really
mm,
showed. And there was a period of play there. I think it was from the 33rd minute to the 35th or 6th minute where Benetton had the ball and they were just pushed back and pushed back and pushed back again, all the way back to their own 22, I think it was. And then we won a scrum there, and that was all from these runners just shooting out and just being in the face of the players receiving the ball and putting them under pressure. Now, of course, obviously, another team they're gonna see that they're gonna drop, like you say, they'll have a man drop back, chip it over the top, do whatever. There's going to be ways around that, but so hopefully they won't do that all the time,
mm.
and they'll have different options. But listen, most teams wouldn't complain with a 28-0 scoreline come halftime, especially with that, like you say, that second try. I know there was an extra man, but it was straight from the restart, and it was a prop that had gone off. I don't really know if it really created that much. I mean, they did create the space, and those final two passes, especially, they weren't just normal passes. They were
Mm.
practically missed passes fired on the run, full pace, accurate, and
Yeah.
the fend at the end. It was just incredible. What did you make of it, Kieran?
Like you said, I think 28-0, if you offered that in any game, I think you'd be happy with that 25 minutes in. And yeah, the last 50 or yeah, the last 15 minutes or so of the half was more about defense. And that's naturally going to happen. Teams are always going to have a purple patch. I don't think Benetton are a bad team. I think they've improved dramatically. They seem to go through spells of doing a little bit better. I remember a few years ago in not before the URC, I think it was the Pro 14 at that stage. They made the playoffs one year. They won the Rainbow Cup that was kind of the bridge between the Pro 14 and the URC. And then, they go through these flashes of doing things very well. They haven't really started this season. I mean, they've been quite poor. Just kind of a lot of I kind of found they lacked any. I don't like talking about intensity on these podcasts because I feel like it's a bit of an easy thing to talk about. It's easy to say if a team does badly, they lacked intensity. But I think that's the way it was, that Benetton just didn't really, they weren't switched on for the game. We'll talk about the second half in a minute, but I just found they were very lackluster. And in fairness to Leinster, I think if we had only gone in 14-0 up, I think that would have been a disappointing half, considering how much control of the game we had, how much the better things. We had the try on the 10th minute that led to the yellow card for Benetton, the collapse small. Thought it was a bit of a stupid yellow card to give away. I mean, the ball's going over anyway. You know, if you collapse them all, it's going to be a yellow card and penalty try. It's not like you're going to prevent a score. You're just going to, if anything, guarantee that the try gets converted. So I thought it was a bit of a brain listing to do, but maybe when heat of the moment, you could maybe find yourself just thinking, I have to stop this going over the line. And then, look, we've talked about it a lot. Frawley and Gibson Park, they're our best 9 and 10 by far. And I think thing about Ross Byrne is, I think if he was playing for a team that wasn't expected to be competing for European Cups, I think everyone would think that Ross Byrne is a useful fly half. He's decent enough, could be in the Ireland squad. Suddenly, if the bar was lower, he'd be absolutely grand. It's the fact that this is a team you're expecting to play really good rugby, compete for European Cups, compete for URC titles. He's just not that kind of player. I mean, I almost feel like there's no point being too critical, because it's not like he's not doing stuff that he's capable of doing. He's not the kind of player who, is going to be dynamic and change the game for you and spot things and sit into a deeper position. Like we saw that in the European Cup final in the Aviva that we don't talk about from a couple of years ago. Leinster lost control of the game. If Johnny Sexton's on that pitch, La Rochelle would probably still have a purple patch, but Sexton would manage to wrestle back control. We'd probably go on and win that game, being 17-0 up. Ross Byrne may be in a position to come on 10, 15 minutes to go. Everyone loves Ross Byrne. It's like, great, he finished off the win and he's in a good position for the World Cup. But because he was kind of exposed in that final, I felt, just as not the kind of player who's going to win you. He's not going to win you anything. He might make sure you don't lose something from a winning position, but he's not going to win you anything. And I think Frawley is that kind of player. So really impressed with him in the first half. Really impressed with Leinster in general in the first half. Obviously, we'll see things fell off a bit. But I think 28-0. I think it would have been a disappointment if it was at halftime. It was only 7-14-0. Not that you're guaranteed to score tries, but I was glad to see Leinster take the chances, because Benetton were very poor, very sloppy, and they really need to kick in the gear soon. With the November internationals coming up, especially for Italy's sake. But if they're gonna once again make the playoffs, which I think is important for the competition, the URC, that both the Italians, the Welsh, as at the moment the weaker two countries in the league, I think it's important that they also have a team pushing for the playoffs at the very least. So really good half of rugby. Went a bit downhill, as we'll see, but I think Frawley and Gibson Park, they were the stars of the show there at the start. Kelleher is obviously a bit of a concern with the injury.
Yeah, I mean, like you say, but the thing about Ross Byrne is it's not that we're kind of trashing his abilities. It's more how they're fitting into Leinster and the way we want to play at the moment. And like you say, when he played his back up to Sexton, it was almost perfect. Like Sexton, but that team was built for Johnny Sexton, and and plus this kind of the Leinster ethos, Leinstertainment and all that, playing a certain brand of rugby. And the way things are now, I mean, this is Sexton's second year gone, and we're trying different things. We're doing things slightly different, but it's the same kind of ethos. And we just saw in that first half an hour or so with Frawley at the helm that he suited that kind of game. I mean, you ask yourself for that try, which Frawley kind of started and finished. Would Ross Byrne have done that the way he plays? And probably not. That's nothing against him. If there was a team that was built for him and his style and his stand backish kind of style, like you say, you'd have a different outcome, and you would look a much better player because there was a team that was designed to be built around him. But that's just not what Leinster have at the moment, and Frawley seems to fit that mold more. And in a way, this game, the way this match progressed, almost gave us a look at both styles and how it played, and it worked out. And like you said, we had the bonus point wrapped up before halftime. But listen, that's enough to say about that first half, where the score at the break was Benetton 0, Leinster 28. Well, before we return to the pod, first a little reminder of all the different places you'll find us in the Rugger Sphere. Myself and the lads are recording an extra chat for our YouTube channel, having a quick look at the other provinces. And when it comes to online, we've actually moved our headquarters to a new address. Just head to linktree/Harpin On Rugby to get access to all our latest content, as well as our presence on all the different social media platforms. Please be sure to comment, like, share, and subscribe as needed. And so Leinster were looking to push on from their 28-point lead as Ross Byrne got the second half underway, Kieran.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, it wasn't really pushing on. It was a pretty sluggish performance. I think, you could argue that the game was kind of set up for Leinster to not be as good, I guess, or effective, because you're 28-0 up against a team that hasn't been good this season. So maybe it was a case of just going down a few gears. But Ross Byrne up for Jimmy O'Brien. Don't want to be overly critical of Ross Byrne, but just he's not the same talent as Frawley. Jimmy O'Brien going off is a worry because he's a good versatile. I feel like he's had a couple of injuries now, and he needs that kind of run with Leinster and possibly Ireland, in the Ireland setup. I don't think he gets in over in the kind of established tree for Ireland, but he needs that kind of run for Leinster in the sense that he's not going off injured. He's not picking up injuries and missing a few games, so that's a bit of a concern. But around the 40, I actually thought Benetton didn't start the half too badly. They were getting up the line quicker. They kind of woke up a little bit. I feel like maybe they might have sensed it might have been on the cards for just to turn into a 50-point game or something. So Leinster were playing through the hands a little bit. It was a bit slower. James Lowe found a good touch, and Benetton won a penalty from the line out. I thought Snyman had a good game, but it's kind of a sloppy penalty to give away. They weren't under any pressure and maybe a bit too eager to make an impact. I think sometimes you can be too eager to get the ball back because Benetton weren't exactly going anywhere. So Benetton had the line out at the halfway line then, and then kind of around the 44th, 45th minute was the first time Benetton really had a chance to kind of play through the hands at in a decent position, and just nothing came of it. They weren't making any gains forward. They got pushed back. We complained about Ross Byrne. He nearly made an intercept, and if he makes that intercept, then we're probably all talking about whatever Ross Byrne. He's great at reading the game, but it was just a case of Benetton. They were trying to get things going, but they just got pushed back, and it nearly turned into a Leinster attack. Benetton had a scrum from there. Leinster won the ball back. Gibson Park put in a good kick for James Lowe, who knocked it on. Just a penalty to Benetton. Again, Benetton, once again, they push further up the pitch. They make their gains, but again, they just get knocked back. I mean, it seemed like they were kind of just a bit of a soft touch. If we'd been playing against a better team, you would have been concerned that, okay, is this lead in a bit of danger? Are we going to give away a losing bonus point if we're playing against a team we're competing against for potentially semi-final seeding? But in fairness, Benetton were just they weren't making anything happen from these opportunities. So one bright spark I found was Jamie Osborne. He put a really good kick through. It was kind of just play was just kind of pretty dull, to be honest. There wasn't a whole lot happened. There were a couple of scrums. Leinster weren't great at scrum time, which is a bit of a concern. In fairness, I thought Ross Byrne was kind of trying to make things happen. He just not much was happening really, and we weren't really able to get anything going in attack. We weren't able to keep up the good attacks that we had in the first half. So just after that Osborne kick, it was both sides made 3 subs. So Milner came on for Porter, Clarkson on for Furlong, and Deeney on for McCarty. I think Joe McCarty, I think it's a big season for him again, just to turn into that kind of behemoth second row. Him and Snyman, that's a nice pairing on paper, and hopefully that works out well. Milner coming on for Porter and Clarkson coming on for Furlong. Like I said it before in the Edinburgh pod, I think it's a big season for those two players, because you look at like Furlong and Porter are definitely, if they're fit, they're going to be in the Ireland squad. So Clarkson and Milner are probably going to be playing around the Six Nations and maybe even a bit around November. You look at Cian Healy, he's kind of covering all 3 front positions at the moment. And you look at, like, he's not going to be around forever. He's not going to be, well, we keep saying he's not going to be able to play every game, and he seems to keep bouncing back. He just seems to be made of something stronger than everyone else. But I think it's a big year for Milner and Clarkson to show, look, this is what we could do. We deserve to maybe be, they're probably not going to start over Porter or Furlong at the moment, but certainly to back them up on the bench. So big year for those. They came on. No harm having a bit of experience from Milner, Clarkson, Milne, Clarkson, and Barron in the front row, especially in a game with difficult positions when there were a lot of scrums, it was raining a lot. But yeah, pretty lackluster first 20 minutes from Leinster. Just kind of hints of getting things going. I mean, like, it looked like there was a couple of times that it's, trying to play through the hands and just look, maybe something's happening here, and then just nothing came of it. Anytime Benetton really got something going, they just got knocked back. They did get over the line once, but it was held up. And in fairness, there was no clear grounding, so I think it had to be awarded as held up. But that was kind of, until their actual try a little bit later, that was kind of the closest they came. So Benetton were probably not the better team, but they were a better team than they were in the first half. Benetton kind of had most of the ball for between the 60 and 70-minute. Benetton had most of the ball. They just weren't effective with it, really. They just didn't really do anything. If we were playing against a better team, we would have conceded 2 or 3 tries, probably the way we were playing, or we would have been in more danger of doing so. But yeah, they were just pretty flat. They need to improve very quickly if they're going to make a run for the playoffs, because we've seen how tight and competitive the league is. Yellow card for Ryan Baird in there, just not rolling away. I thought, I think the Benetton player was making it hard for him to roll away, but he wasn't really making an effort to roll away at the same time. So, like I said, sometimes you have to give a good picture to the ref. Benetton did get over for a try then with 30 minutes to go, so far too late to really come back into the game. But they had a line out and ball over the line. It was a well put together line out. It was a good composed line out admittedly against 14 men. They were stopped, and they managed to build up their momentum again. Wasn't converted. A few backs were running into the line out. So in fairness, that was kind of the most intensity we saw from Benetton that day. That was the most kind of up for the game they were, and they did get a try. So I think if they switch on a bit and start playing better rugby, they will get results. But in fairness, they probably weren't banking on this game as something they were going to take anything out of exactly. So there was a break and play then after that. And what I like about Caelan Doris is he brought in the Leinster troops and said, look, we need to change something, because it had been a lackluster, sluggish second half, pretty much half an hour of the game, more than half an hour of the game gone, and it's just Leinster hadn't gotten anything going. Leinster never really looked like scoring in that second half until the latter stages. And I think that last 10 minutes it was better. Not that it was particularly good, it was just better than it had been. So that was good by Doris. I think that's something he needs to do as captain. That's probably something. It's probably why it's better having one captain than 2 captains, because last year Ringrose and Ryan, if they're playing together and they're co-captain, it's probably a case of, well, am I talking to them or are you talking to them? So I think that was good by Doris. So I was glad to see that. From there, about kind of 5-6 minutes ago, there's a few scrum resets. There was kind of a series of scrum resets. The scrummaging was poor, and it was a day for kind of bad scrummaging with the weather. Ringrose went off for Penny. I didn't see what happened, if there was an injury there or if it was just kind of a case of reshuffling and maybe keeping them safe. But again, that's a bit of a problem with the 6-2 split. I think Tom said it well there. A 6-2 split works really well until it doesn't. If you have an injury to a back, suddenly that's I don't think we had the right bench for the 6-2 split. I think if Rossburn is your fly half on the bench, you need another back there. I don't think the forwards were impactful enough to justify having six of them on the bench. So Scott Penny's
unfortunately, Frawley is the best for a 6-2.
Yeah, unfortunately he
blitz,
is. So
but
you're probably
we don't
looking
want
at
him there. Yeah,
you're probably looking at your star Prendergast and have Frawley on the bench, and then if Prendergast makes mistakes, at least he's going to learn from it. It's a weird kind of Frawley's better than Ross Byrne, but in a weird way, Frawley's a better substitute to have to bring on than Ross Byrne. So maybe
he's a better starter and a better sub. I mean, what does that tell you?
Maybe you just try keeping things ticking over for 40, 50 minutes, and then you bring Frawley on to really make things more dynamic. But I think the 60 split didn't work.
We could do minis rugby, rolling subs.
That might be the way to do it.
Bring it back
but I think the 6-2 it just didn't work on the day. It's probably no harm trying it out in games like this where Leinster were comfortable winners in the end, despite not playing particularly well. But I think if you're having Ross Byrne as your 10 on the bench, it's an interesting one. You probably can't do the 6-2. You probably need to have like the likes of a Jimmy O'Brien, a Jamie Osborne on the bench, or you need to have Frawley as your 10, a scrum half, and you go 6-2 that way. So you're very reliant on, if that's the case, if Frawley, you're very reliant on one of them doing a good job for the 44 those players come on. But then Josh van der Fleer did well there towards the end of the game. He won a turnover, made good yards, got all the way up the pitch. Leinster up to the line, won a 5-metre scrum. Leinster won a penalty from the line out. It was a good line out to Baird. Good maul again, got stopped but managed to reset and not weren't forced to use it. Barron did well to get over. He kind of pivoted over the line. Ross Byrne did convert, so he got the last score of the game. But I thought, like that last try kind of put a bit of glass on the score line. But to be honest, 28-5 would have kind of summed up the game. A good first half from Leinster and a really poor second half from both sides really, but more so Leinster.
Yeah, I mean, just two things I picked out in the second half, sort of on the semi-positive kind of thing. James Lowe's kicking up the wing and chasing, and I think he forced two 5-metre scrums just by following his own kicks. I mean, you look at, you see Stockdale got one of his classic little chips tries for Ulster that he's famous for, but when you see what Lowe can do, just his all-round game, just that particular aspect, the chip and the follow up the line, and the strength to just hold up the guy at the other end of it, that was great from him, and it happened more than once. And the second thing was the goal line dropouts. There was another one. It's getting to a stage now where if there's a goal line dropout to the opposition, it's almost like a 5-metre line out for Leinster at the moment. You're expecting a try opportunity, and you had Caelan. We saw it with Jack Conan the past couple of weeks when he was number 8, but you saw it again here. Just wherever the ball goes, it goes straight to Caelan Doris, and he barrels ahead, and the players ahead of him are kind of set up in such a way that if they're not, hopefully they're not full on blocking. In this case, Ryan Baird was called, but I don't even know if he hadn't done anything, if he hadn't influenced players, like Doris still could have had his chance. But he was really getting us on the front foot in the 22 from that situation. We're almost expecting it at this stage, so it's an extra set piece for us. So that's something to look out for. But otherwise, it wasn't a great half. It was more the defensive side of things that we were, Benetton really had to work for the one try they got. It was right after Baird went off for his yellow card. We got a try right at the end, which you say put a cost in the scoreline, and the final score of which was Benetton 5, Leinster 35. Well, elsewhere in the URC, it took a late penalty from Cathal Ford to give Connacht a win at Páirc Uí Scarlets, while Ulster fell heavily to the Bulls in Pretoria and Munster shut out the Ospreys in Cork. We'll be chatting more about the provinces in our bonus chat. Check that out on our YouTube channel during the week. There were also round 3 wins for the Stormers, Sharks, Lions, and Glasgow, all of which leaves Leinster as the only team with 15 points to top the URC table, although the Lions also have a maximum from their 2 matches. Of course, it's very early days yet. Elsewhere, the Irish women were unable to repeat their amazing result from last weekend as they fell 21-8 to the host nation Canada in the WXV1 tournament in Vancouver. A penalty try after 25 minutes included a yellow card for Niamh O'Dowd, and the host added 2 further tries during the sin bin, and a second half score from Emer Considine wasn't enough to claw it back. But spirits still should be high in the camp, and they certainly can fancy their chances in their final match next weekend against the USA. Meanwhile, down in South Africa, 4 first-half tries from Jude Postlethwaite, Che Mullins, Sean Jansen, and player of the match and skipper Alex Kendellen, and 4 place kicks from the boot of Sam Prendergast were enough to give emerging Ireland a 29-24 win against the Western Force in the second match of their tour. Now, going back to our feature match, Leo Cullen said afterwards, quote, "The last thing you want to do away from home with a heavy pitch and a partisan crowd is get into a wrestle. We always had that advantage in terms of the scoreboard, so overall, very pleased," end quote. And from our Facebook page, I think this comment from Michaela Monaghan summed up the general opinion. She said, "Very one-sided, but another bonus point win in the bank. Frawley needs to stay at 10 instead of Ross Byrne." We always leave a post open on a Facebook page after the final whistle for Leinster and Ireland games, so why don't you join in the conversation next time? And this brings us to our final thoughts, starting with Tom.
Yeah, look, as you summed it up yourself, Jeff, we're 15 from 15, and I did say at the start of the season I'm just going to enjoy the games as they come, and it was great entertainment, especially in that first half. Some of the rugby, that's the reason we watch the sport and we follow Leinster. It's just seeing scores like that, the Frawley try, and the overall play. So look, it was a very good win. Treviso, or Benetton, when they get their act together, is a hard place to win. So to get 5 points there, that'll be a lot more than most teams get there, and that's what it's all about, trying to get up the ladder at the end of the season and get home knockouts and stuff like that. So fantastic win. I think a few positives, I think, as well. I think Fintan Gunn coming off the bench, he added that pace. He's playing himself into contention for a 23 spot, especially with Foley's down in South Africa, I think, isn't he? With Emerging Ireland, and Luke McGrath's performance against the Dragons wasn't great. So it's good to see form, not writing off Luke yet, of course, but it's good to see form getting rewarded, and I'd like to see Gunn on the bench against Munster again next week, to keep that style of play, because he did add an injection of pace, not for the last 10 minutes, in that to get that 5th try and just sort of, as Kieran said, just add a bit of gloss into the score. We weren't scoreless for the second half. I think another point to note is, maybe just to mention, just to finish off the game, I think Van der Fleer had a great game. I think Kieran rightly pointed out he made the break that got us up for that 5th try, but his work rate in the previous 2 rucks of 10 was just outstanding. The guy is an engine. Like this was in 79, whatever it was, 77 minutes, wet conditions in Italy. We'd won the game, and to be just hitting rucks and making breaks and doing passes to get just that drive that's just invaluable for, so word for Josh, we do sort of take him for granted, but just that engine and work rate again, just to get us up that side of the pitch. But yeah, all in all, a fantastic win. Good to get RG off and on, buying his own steam, and no doubt he'll feature next week as well. Yeah, all in all, good performance. You know what I mean? We've touched on what we see as issues, but just concentrating on the positives. It was a great win, and we've seen some great rugby, especially in the first 40.
Absolutely. And Kieran?
Yeah, I think 15 points for 3 games. I think you can't get much better than that. So I think these first 3 games have been more about getting players into form, playing yourselves into form. Obviously, we'll need to be better next week. There's no doubt about it. Croke Park, it's Leinster Munster. It's a different kind of game. Like it's a derby. It's the biggest provincial rivalry. It's the biggest rivalry in the URC probably. It's going to be a completely different game. There's no doubt Munster are going to be up for it. So we'll need to be better over 80 minutes. If we play like in the first half for the 80 minutes, that's great. If we play the second half for 80 minutes, it's going to be a very long day. Hope the game's a bit more entertaining in the second half. Was next week. So look, it's good to just get players get their minutes, and you can keep things ticking over on the table, picking up points. I really think if Leinster, I'll say it again, need to come into form probably after the Six Nations and the South Africa tour, I think it's crucial we pick up something from the South Africa tour this year. But if we're top of the league or in the top 2 anyway, come the end of the Six Nations, I think that's a really good position to be in. And then
we can start coming into form after the Champions Cup. Hopefully, there's a last 16 round for us. Hopefully, there's a good run to the Champions Cup, and then you can start really playing good rugby. So sometimes these games are just about getting through them. I mean, no one's going to remember this one really. You'll remember the Kieran Frawley try, but no one's going to remember this game as like a classic. Probably not going to remember the Edinburgh the Dragons one either. That's not the worst thing in the world. Sometimes you just need to keep things ticking over. So I think it was good to get minutes in the legs. RG Snyman came through his debut without any injuries. Bit of a concern over Kelleher and Jimmy O'Brien. Hopefully nothing too serious. But I think generally speaking, look, sometimes you have to say a win is a win and you move on. You take the positives, work on the negatives. I agree. Frawley has to start at 10 in big games. I mean, he's our best 10. I'd rather Frawley start to 10 in the big games, and for, don't want to say easier games, more winnable games you'd expect us to win. When Prendergast obviously is away with the Emerging Ireland, I'd like to see him start at 10 for those games to get him the minutes. Frawley on the bench, you can do your 6-2 split with Frawley on the bench. It gets us used to the 6-2 split. I think they have to be the two main options at 10. Ross Byrne and maybe Harry Byrne can keep things ticking over when needs be, but they're our outstanding fly half and our outstanding young fly half, so I think they need to be the options. So yeah, look, 35-5 scoreboard. It would have been a worse win if we hadn't gotten that score at the end, because at least you win the second half at least. Jeff, happy enough. I mean, with the first three results, not great performances, but there's plenty of time to start playing good rugby later in the season.
That's brilliant, lads. Many thanks again to Tom and Kieran for joining me, and I hope to have you on again soon. Thanks, lads.
Thanks, Jeff.
Jeff.
As for our next batch of Harpin, keep an eye on our YouTube channel during the week for our latest bonus chat, where we'll be looking at the Irish Shield contenders, and also our 80+ column, which will post on Wednesday. After that, we'll be turning our attention to that nostalgic visit of Munster to Croker, so be sure to follow us on any or all of our social media platforms, which you'll find at linktree/Harpin On Rugby. In the meantime, stay safe, everyone. Slán.